Okay, so when you hear the name Nikola Tesla, what comes to mind? Probably lightning bolts, right? Those crazy futuristic coils. Well, what if I told you he was more than just an inventor? He was a physicist who thought he'd found a single grand equation that could solve, well, everything about humanity's future. Seriously, let's get into it.
Sounds a bit like science fiction, doesn't it? To calculate the entire future of humanity with a physics equation? But for Tesla, this wasn't sci-fi. This was pure science. He truly believed that the whole story of human progress, our past, our present, and where we're headed, it could all be understood and even steered by a basic law of motion.
And how do we know this? Well, because he wrote it all down for us. We're going straight to the source here, looking at this amazing article he published way back in 1900. This is the paper where he laid out his entire master plan, his whole philosophy for the future of humankind. So the core of this whole thing is what he called human energy. And listen, he didn't mean this in some, metaphorical, spiritual way. No. He meant it literally. He actually defined it using the classic physics equation for kinetic energy, E equals 1/2 mv squared. For Tesla, all of humanity was just one single object, one mass, moving forward. And he was dead serious about this. He actually wrote that we have to accept this idea of humanity as a whole, as a physical fact. Just think about that. You, me, everyone, we're all just tiny parts of one giant mass. A mass that's governed by the exact same universal laws as, say, a planet orbiting the sun. Okay, so if human progress is just an equation, how do you solve it, right? Well, Tesla actually broke it down with this simple little diagram he drew. You see the human mass right there? It's being pushed forward by one force and held back by another. So to increase our total energy, our progress, he said, we just have to play with these three key variables. And this gives us a really clear roadmap. He called them his 3 levers for progress. Number 1, we need to increase the mass. Number 2, we've got to reduce the forces that hold us back. And number 3, we need to pump up the forces that push us forward. Simple, right? Let's break them down one by one. First up, increase the mass. What does that even mean? Well, for Tesla, it wasn't just about having more people. Not at all. A greater mass meant a healthier, stronger, better-fed population. So he figured the most direct way to do that was to solve one of the biggest problems of all, food. And his solution for this? It was absolutely mind-blowing. He came up with a way to basically burn the nitrogen in the atmosphere using a super powerful electrical oscillator. In other words, he was literally pulling fertilizer right out of thin air. This photo here shows the actual experiment. He was convinced this one process could feed the entire planet. Okay, on to lever number 2, reducing the stuff that holds us back. Tesla called these retarding forces, and he had a whole list of them. But for him, the biggest, the absolute most destructive waste of human energy was war. Yeah, he saw war as just pure friction. It's this massive drag on the whole system. It grinds progress to a halt and pours all this energy into destruction instead of creation. So for him, the big question was, how do we get rid of this massive negative force for good? And you guessed it, he had a radical solution. He invented this thing. It's called the teleautomaton, and it was the world's very first remote-controlled vehicle. He felt these machines could be the perfect defensive weapons. His big idea was to make war so technologically terrifying, so pointless, that no country would ever even think about attacking another. But, and this is a big but, here's the twist. The very invention Tesla created to end war by making defense unstoppable, well, it evolved into one of the most powerful tools of offensive warfare today, the drone. It's just a crazy reminder of how a utopian dream can end up in a much, much more complicated reality. Which brings us to the third and final lever. And this is the one Tesla basically dedicated his entire life to, increasing the force that pushes humanity forward. For him, that boiled down to one thing, energy, harnessing more power to do more work, to get us moving faster. And his vision for this, wow. It was nothing short of epic. He imagined a future where science and energy would literally unite the entire planet. All the divisions that hold us back would just fade away. This was so much bigger than just making electricity. It was about lifting up the entire human race. Now, to pull this off, he needed to tap into just unbelievable amounts of power. And these photos, these are incredible. They're from his article, and they show you the sheer scale of the forces he was messing with. This is not trick photography, folks. This is raw, untamed power being unleashed right there in his lab.
I mean, just look at this. The guy was creating artificial lightning. He was figuring out how to send massive amounts of energy not just through wires, but through the ground, through the air itself. He was pushing the absolute limits of what anyone thought was even possible.
This next shot really captures his ultimate goal. That's a single electrical discharge of 7,000 horsepower. All with these wild experiments, all this spectacular chaos, it was all building toward his grandest vision of all, a global wireless system that would provide limitless, clean, and maybe even free energy to every single person on the planet.
And that's how it all circles back to his big formula, see? Abundant food, that increases the mass. Automated defense, that gets rid of the friction of war. And limitless energy, that's the force to accelerate us all forward. Every single one of his huge, ambitious ideas, it was just a variable in his one elegant equation for the future.
So it leaves us with a really fascinating question, doesn't it? More than 100 years ago, Tesla came up with this purely physical, energy-based way to measure human progress. If he were around today, do you think his equation would still work? Or do we need a completely new formula for our future?